Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined by our good friend Michael Diamond from Cobblestone. Michael has been helping us customize amazing Morocco itineraries for the last 5 to 6 years. Michael, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate your time. Michael, let's jump into Morocco and maybe let's go in. Why is Morocco so intriguing to U.S. travelers?
Hi, Juan. Thanks for having me. It's a bit of a riddle for folks who haven't been there. It sometimes sits in our imaginations because baby boomers think of the Rolling Stones going there and having all sorts of crazy times. It is Islamic. It is Africa. It is far away. It is Berber. It is Arab. It is Muslim. It has an interesting Jewish history. So I think Morocco is an especially amazing destination for clients, families, couples who have been to Europe and they're ready to push their boundaries a little bit. So Morocco, just 7 hours from JFK, I know it's still amazing to think about, just a quick jaunt. You are in North Africa in a country that is such a mix of things. It's colorful, it's exotic, it's sensory, the food is amazing. So it brings all these things together and essentially as trip planners gives us tools to really customize a trip.
Yeah.
And really, really focus on the client's interests. And I think it's just that great next step to the Muslim world in Africa.
And I think, kind of like what you're saying is it really has something for everybody.
Yeah.
From somebody who's into design, somebody who's into adventure, somebody who wants to go surfing, there's all of these things within this country and so diverse. The topography is amazing. So I think it's always calling people and it really does a really nice thing. It really checks a lot of boxes for a lot of people. So it's all wonderful. One of the things is we build itineraries for clients. They're talking about experiences. There's so much to do here. What are some of the things that kind of stand out in people's minds that you guys kind of add to the itineraries?
Well, a trip to Morocco involves a lot of, as you said, variety of landscapes and experiences. So because you've got this interesting influence, the French influence, the Spanish influence in the north, Islam, Judaism, even Christianity in places, you have an amazing amount of cooking options. We can do beautiful cooking classes in private riads. We can do them in villages where you can really get traditional, or you can do an updated version of Moroccan cuisine. That's what that photo on the upper left is, in a small riad, a small private home, essentially. Motorcycle sidecars on the bottom left are amazing. Some of the great things we do are henna ceremony, which is something that young women in Morocco will do before marriage. Belly dancing lessons. We work with a young designer who can, in Marrakesh, focus on really some of the interesting expat and local artisan communities that are doing amazing things. One, the Yves Saint Laurent Museum, which opened in Paris at the same time a few years ago, opened in Marrakesh. This is beautifully architectural building, beautifully designed. For some clients who have a really strong interest, we can even open up Villa Oasis, the former home of Yves Saint Laurent and his partner, Pierre Berger. We can do hiking. We can do, as you mentioned, surf lessons, windsurf lessons, great photo sessions for those who are Instagram friendly. And one of the big highlights of Morocco often is getting down to the Sahara and spending a night in a private encampment or a shared encampment, sitting around the fire with African stars above, with wonderful music where you can hear the rhythms of sub-Saharan Africa and the beats of Andalusia, southern Spain, where the Moroccan influence is strong as well.
Well, and I think the pictures. One of the things about I've been lucky to travel twice to the country and really traversed a lot of it. Pictures never do it justice. The desert, in particular, the dunes. It's exhilarating when you're there, and you feel like you're in no man's land. Obviously, there's nothing there except for your camp. and they just prepare this wonderful meal, and the stars and the stars and the stars are just amazing, and then the sunrise is just amazing. So the words, and then all of a sudden you go to the Mid Atlas Mountains, and you feel like you're in Switzerland. You can ski in the Mid Atlas Mountains, which is kind of very, very, very incredible about it. So there's so much to offer in this country, and again, words and pictures cannot do it justice. But some of the stars, there's a lot of things to do in the country, but the two main stars sometimes that people will concentrate first are going to be Marrakesh and Fez. Can we talk a little bit about the differences between the two and some things to consider when you visit?
Sure, absolutely. They're two very different cities, but at the same time, they're the two great historic cities. And I feel to get a full picture of Morocco, or a fuller picture of Morocco, you should really visit both. This is the tanneries of Fez, where they're taking hides and dyeing them in these pools that are somewhat an astounding photograph and a very pungent one as well, if you're there, as you may recall. Fez is really immersive. It is provincial in the best way. Fez is kind of unchangeable. You can be in that old city and really feel like you're sitting drinking cafe and a little bit of mint tea or a cappuccino, and you really get the feel like Fez looked this way 500, 1,000 years ago. The architecture is amazing. It's a small city. The oldest university in the world, the Al Karawan Mosque, is located in Fez. It's a place where people from Europe came to study in the Middle Ages, in the Dark Ages, I should say. And Marrakesh is vibrant, and whereas Fez is the city of learning and knowledge and food and artisanship, Marrakesh, this is the main square of Marrakesh, is vibrant, is alive, is a Berber city. Berbers are the Aboriginal inhabitants of North Africa, or these days called Amazigh. It's a crossroads. It's a caravan stop. It's the end of the caravan from coming up from sub-Saharan Africa. And Marrakesh has a growing French and tradition, a little bit of American expat community around the arts. So all of a sudden, Marrakesh has a couple great art museums, an African art museum that's fantastic. The Yves Saint Laurent Museum and the Madrigal Gardens I mentioned. It's a shopper's paradise because all of that expat energy is being put into producing accessories, homeware, rugs in really new and fresh ways. And that's often exciting. Yet at the same time, this old city still is, big walled city nestled against the high Atlas. On a clear day, you can see those mountains just sort of hanging above the horizon from Marrakesh. So Marrakesh is often the longest stay on a trip, but it's important to get a feel of both Fez and Marrakesh to really get a feel for the country.
And I think when you're walking inside these cities of the old Medinas, one of the things that's very not daunting, but very different from European cities or old cities is that all of the homes were built inward, right? So one of the very interesting things is that you're really walking along walls, and then the beauty is when you walk in, you have these beautiful doors that were, if I remember correctly, are a sign or very symbolic, and then you walk into these beautiful courtyards. So it's a very, very different feeling than walking in, old Paris, left bank of Paris or something like that, or old towns in Tuscany or something like that. So it's a very, very different feeling as you walk through. So, and then one of the good things too, though, is if you stayed both of these cities, you have these wonderful experiences within the city, but then just a short drive away, there's a lot of experiences outside. Can we talk about a few of those type of experiences that people can have?
Yeah, absolutely.
Casablanca.
That's okay. I was going to mention just quickly Casablanca, which is often an entry point. That's the Grand Mosque on the sea, and that's also worthwhile visiting. But further afield, boy, you've got the mountains, you've got the seaside. Essaouira on the coast, the bottom left picture, is a town that the Portuguese built in the 1700s. They built a number of outposts as they traded with Morocco and used Morocco as their entree to sub-Saharan Africa. So these towns, some of them are little old surf towns. Essaouira is a full-on historic town where there was a renovation. And interestingly enough, that town 200 years ago was a third Jewish. And they've been renovating and restoring. It's another reason why Morocco is kind of unique in the Arab and Muslim world, because they're preserving the Jewish heritage, even though the community is small there now. There's actually a Jewish museum in Casablanca. And then further afield in the north, we have Tangier, a town that has the Spanish colonial influence and feel, given that it was a protectorate of Spain post-war. And then beautiful town, the middle photo of Chefchaouen, which is a photographer's dream, the Blue City, it's called. It is, it was a little place lost in time, and it's just this great little mountain town with amazing hiking nearby. Yeah. And then the High Atlas Mountains, just an hour from Marrakesh. Yeah. And you've got beautiful hotels like Richard Branson's Casbah Tamadot, great hiking, whether it's a full day hike. I have clients sometimes who climb Mount Toubkal, the highest peak in North Africa. But on even a 2, 3, 4 hour hike, you can get out into these villages and really understand how people lived for centuries and how they're living now. And
it's funny, the Casbah, this is, a word we constantly hear from travel advisors. And tell us a bit about a stay at a Casbah, because there's multiple, they're multiple. Tell us a little bit about that kind of stay. And what's a Casbah?
A Casbah is an earthen fortress. It is essentially, in the countryside, it would have been something that would have been built over a mountain pass, which would have been a caravan route coming up from the south, usually bringing salt and gold, some of which would end up in Europe. And in the cities, it's a citadel, like a sort of fortified corner of a city. So you can stay in a Casbah in a bunch of different ways, whether it's in the mountains or the desert south. We will explore Casbahs in the desert south, some of which are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And you can stay in a riad, a Casbah, or a palace in the cities. This small hotel, a boutique property called Villa des Oranges, is a bunch of courtyards. A riad, which means garden in Arabic, is a small courtyard home. It would have been a multi-generational home where, 30 people could live over the generations and branches of a family. And these have been taken and made into small hotels. And it's a wonderful feeling to be in the old city. And as you said a little bit ago about sort of the walls and the surprise of walking in from a dusty alleyway into a lush garden courtyard with orange trees and birds and a pool and beautiful. You never see this from the outside. And it's a reflection of their respect for privacy and Islam's disdain for showing wealth. So it's all built into the architecture, and to experience and stay in one of these places is often a highlight for folks.
And it's funny, I'm from Puerto Rico originally, and you see these. It's amazing that these courtyards really were taking into, in my opinion, into Spanish architecture and brought across the New World into San Juan and to Cartagena. And so this brings back all those feelings of growing up and going to those old great homes in San Juan. But what's amazing about it in the Medinas of Fez or in Marrakesh is that, like you said, there's these busy alleyways outside, people walking around with, carts. Again, there's no cars in any of these places, but there's people walking around. And then all of you walk into this oasis inside, this beautiful oasis inside a city. It is such a huge contrast. And I think that's one of the things about this country that I love is it's so many contrasts in this country that makes it so incredibly interesting to people and fun to go visit as well. So you can do everything here. And I guess that brings us to also, what surprises most people about their trip to Morocco in particular? Anything that comes to mind as you've been doing this? You've been doing this for over 20 years, but anything that comes to mind that surprises people?
It's my favorite thing to hear when folks get back is that it surprised them how warm the people were, how warm the welcome is. I think in America, the news, the media gives us a different message about Islamic countries. And there's a lot of subtlety to Moroccan culture. So all these influences we talked about and the architecture that spread, across continents, and you see the influences in places across the world. That's what surprises them. The fact that you can have a cappuccino in the new town at a beautiful little hip patisserie, and then, be off in your cooking class and making a chicken tagine over a fire in a tiny village just 40 minutes from Marrakesh. That kind of contrast is astounding, and that's really what surprises folks.
Yeah, I just walking around and interacting with folks throughout the country was amazing. You definitely get an understanding. when I've been there, you also have to, you kind of have to reset your mind, especially coming from New York City, that we're just assume so much. In Morocco, you do have to slow down a little bit and ask lots of questions. And once you get into the flow of things, it's just a wonderful, warm, and delicious place to visit, honestly. But no, it's great. It's one of those places that always comes to mind for folks. And we're so happy that we're partnered with you. I think that one of the things too is it's so easy to get to, kind of like what you mentioned. What are some of the gateways into the country from the Northeast or from the United States?
Sure. From the States, the direct option flying from JFK, Washington Dulles Airport, and just starting up again, Miami, is on Royal Air Morocco. The big development over the last couple of years that Royal Air Morocco joined One World and is a code share with American. So you can use your American miles or your One World miles. And it's a 7-hour flight from JFK, 8 hours coming home. You can be in Casablanca. We don't often have folks spend a lot of time in Casablanca, but it's just 2.5 hours from Marrakesh, 3.5 hours from Fez. And of course, when working with LA Travel Advisors, we're going to get the pace of the client right. We're going to talk about how the first day should be. Do you need to get over jet lag, or are you just roaring to go and really get to the core of the country? You can also fly from Marrakesh. Into Marrakesh, a lot of flights to Europe, and Fez, just a handful of flights to Europe.
And that's one of the things that makes Marrakesh so international, or starting to be European. There's so many flights into Marrakesh. It's actually the best, if I remember correctly, the better of the airports. It's a very international airport, especially from Europe. And I think logistically as well, the roads are amazing throughout the country. Obviously, when you're going through the Atlas Mountains or through the Mid-Atlas, obviously those are country, they're mountain roads, so they're hilly, but the infrastructure in the country is just wonderful. So it's very easy to get around with. Well, Michael, thanks so much for all of your time and going through some of the things that people love about Morocco and some of your knowledge. We appreciate all your partnership and your help with our clients, and we're so glad that things are going back, and we're having we have our first client going there tomorrow with you on April 2nd. She's arriving, so we appreciate all your time.
Thank you so much, Juan. Always great to work with the amazing advisors at Ellie, and we're so appreciate the support and look forward to great days ahead.
Talk to you in a bit. Bye.
Thanks. Take care.